Okay. Okay, guys. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Scale with Stability Speaker Spotlight. Today, we're talking about a problem that almost every business owner runs into once they start building a team. And here's what we're seeing all the time: you hire great people, you talk about your values, but somehow people still make decisions that do not match the culture you thought you had. And at Skill and Stability, we really believe that strong businesses are built on something more than revenue. They're built on leadership, stewardship, and values that protect what really matters most: our faith, our family, our health, and our peace of mind. But values only work if your team actually knows how to live them out. And that's why I'm really excited for this conversation. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Thaddeus Tondu. I call you Thad all the time, is Thaddeus Tondu, founder and agency leader who has built and led teams helping businesses create cultures that people genuinely want to be part of. And your session, Thad, is focused on the culture blueprint. Build a team people love to join and hate to leave, which I think it's a great topic for everybody that's attending. That tell us, how do you get in this topic? Like, how does this become part of like the priorities? Like when you were deciding, the one thing that you wanted to share with the community here at Scale Stability, and this came to your mind, like why was this what was this topic?
Yeah, so I mean, I've talked on this a couple times at a couple different events on this idea of culture, and I think it's some people think it's a buzzword, but at the end of the day, if you have a great company culture, people actually want to stay in your organization. I've had the privilege of my life of working for two companies in particular that had really great company cultures. I've also had the privilege of working for with companies that have really poor company cultures. So I've seen both ends of the spectrum, and by and large, the ones that I enjoyed working with had great company cultures. And so if you have a great company culture, more people want to work for your organization and they will stay longer.
We actually had a really good session on culture yesterday inside of like our weekly or monthly call on leadership, which
We
so
did,
this
yes.
topic, yeah, this topic is really great. What do you think that, part of the sessions that we're doing is for to help our attendees, but also everybody that's watching this, maybe on replay, or watching it live, to learn more about, some of the topics that we believe are important, relevant, and life changing for business owners. What do you think is the biggest mistake you see business owners making when it comes to this topic of culture?
Well, first off, not having one or thinking that they have one. Look, I work with home service businesses, HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, and I'm going to liken it to them for a second because I see this all the time. They're like, how come my employees, my team members leave me? I'm paying them more money, but they're going to my competitors. Money isn't the motivating factor for a lot of people. Yeah, sure, you got to pay your bills, but the majority of individuals actually aren't motivated by money. And so people think that, well, money's going to keep people around. Well, no, it's actually a culture that keeps people around. And when you have a great culture, that's what really separates the good businesses from the poor businesses, or the great businesses from the good businesses. Good to great. Jim Collins talks about that as well. And so when you have this culture, that's the defining thing of putting it into place, but actually a culture on purpose, not just an accidental fluke. Ooh, we got a culture.
Mm-hmm. And I know like the title for this live is your core values are probably useless, and here's why. But you really talk about, this kind of thought an idea that a lot of people pick their values, but they're really just a decoration in their business, right? Like something that we put on the walls, and then that's to the extent that they use them. Why do you believe that that's true in so many businesses today?
Because I lived it when we started this company on Purpose Media. And like, look, we were always intentional of having a great culture inside of our organization, and we did it by fluke at the beginning. And then when we really saw what our core values can do, we started moving it in a better way. People think that honesty, integrity, and transparency are words that define your company culture. Well, those actually suck for company culture words, like straight up. And so, like, a good example is when we started, guess what our three of our core values were: honesty, integrity, transparency. Now we've actually wrapped all of those into one sentence: do what's right, not what's easy. That's our first core value because it blends in honesty, integrity, and transparency. And so when you can blend in all three of those together into an actual word, now you have that it's there. The other part that we looked at from our core values saying, okay, well, we can put good core values down on paper. But does our team then live those day to day? Can they take them home with them? Can it be a personal and a professional thing? And that's how we looked at our core values when we redid them. We're like, okay, well, let's look at it through that lens. How can they be better humans at home so their home life thrives? And when the home life thrives, guess what? Work life tends to follow suit. And so that's how we crafted a lot of our core values. And that's why I think a lot of people miss the mark on their core values, because they want to do what they think is right for them as the owner. It's not about you, it's about your people.
So let's think about somebody that has their core values already. They picked them, they have been like using them for years, and they feel this friction between what they have stated that they follow and what is actually happening. What do you feel it's a big, or what's the difference between, those values that sound good on paper and a value that's actually shaping a behavior?
It's if people actually live them out. If people actually do them, if people are actually living them out and actually doing them and embody those on their day-to-day basis, that's the differentiating factor, in my opinion, on core values that move the needle or not. And look, you could still have honesty as a core value. I'm not going to knock that for all the people that have that on there. It could be that, but do your people live it? Can they take that home with them? Can they run with it? Can they do what they need to do on a day-by-day basis by looking and filtering through all of their decisions against your core values? That's the other piece, is that people forget sometimes that decisions need to be made in a lens through, in part, I mean, there's other filters that go through it, but you make decisions in part through the lens of your core values as your organization, because those are the guiding principles for your business. Each individual has their own individual core values that guide their life and their decisions that they make. Not everybody puts them down on paper. But if your company has those, now that's your lens, that's your filter. And when you can action your day-to-day through that, that's what moves the needle.
I really like the fact that you made your core values an actual sentence. I feel like that is a really good way to create action in having this nouns, really become verbs, right? Like in the way that you're doing it. Do you feel like that should be what every business owner should do? Like find a way to incorporate, because a lot of people have like our mission statement, right? So like we have our values, and then our mission statement is the thing that's gonna, like, this is what we do here. Do you feel like it's that connection, or like maybe like a bridge between those two when you like put them into a sentence?
Yes and no, and like not all of ours are sentences. Like we have be resourceful. Like that's one of our core values. Fail forward. We actually changed one of our core values about a year ago. We went from unconventional thinking to and changed it to fail forward. And it's okay to change your core values, which resonate with you. So they don't necessarily have to be sentences, but it has to be something that somebody can grab onto. And for that, and so like it's good to paste your mission up on the wall and that, but people don't really buy into the mission so much. They buy into the day to day. What's the day-to-day? Core values.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, like we're going to have different size businesses coming to the event. And one thing which I am really excited, because it makes conversation, just really interesting to be able to share like where you're at, what you're looking for to do. And then for people that have walked that path, to be able to give back. As you're thinking about, these leaders and business owners that you're going to be meeting, why do leaders struggle to make value stick once their team grows past a few people? Especially if they're like already like, I think and yesterday we're chatting this in the group, it's very easy to define culture when you have a small team, right? Like the source of the culture normally is the founder. You're setting up the tone. You're the thermometer, right? Not the thermostat, or is that vice versa, whatever that is. But you're setting the tone, right, for your business. As your business grows and you have less interaction with every single person in that team, I feel like the companies tend to struggle. So why do leaders struggle to make those values stick once your team grows past a few people?
Yeah, I think there's a few things behind it, and you are right. Like when you're a smaller team, when you're an owner, you're in the day to day with the team members, and as you get to the point, probably around that like 8 to 10 people, where you start having an operations manager or a project manager or whatever type of manager in place in your business. Now that person is the person that ends up talking with the team more on a day-to-day basis than the owner, because the roles transition, unless the owner is like the manager and they hire somebody else, which is kind of an inverse way of looking at doing that. But the owner-led aspect of things is there because it's your culture, your vision, your values, what your stamp is on that. The miss becomes not having a culture steward, or not having the right culture steward in place. And that culture steward is the person who takes what the owner has created to be able to say, okay, these are the core values of the organization. This is what matters. They have the conversations with the owner on a day-by-day basis, or several times a week, and they can transcend that culture down to the team members. If you miss the mark on that culture steward and you get it wrong, it's okay. It happens. You can walk it back. You just have to find somebody else that's a culture steward. I just went through this in my business. We're 12 people, and we have our culture steward wasn't the wrong person by any stretch, but we had some mismatches in terms of some of the vision of the culture of what I had originally set out to do and to where we're at right now. And so we have to walk that back to say, okay, well, how can we reintegrate that? How can we redo this? How can we put this into practice so our team knows our culture, our vision, our mission, all those things? And so what did we do? Well, we have a weekly team kickoff call on Mondays, where it's an all hands meeting. And at the end, we actually have, and so we use Bloom Growth. We're on the EOS framework. And so we have a screen that pops up of what our vision, our mission, our core values, our ideal target is. And we review that every single week now. And so I'm the one that reviews it. And then it reintegrates in with the team so they keep on doing it. And I'm going to keep doing this even when our team grows. Why? Because the culture is what matters. Those vision, the core values are what matters. And if you can really hit those home every single time, day in and day out, that's what matters. Culture erodes 1% a day if you don't talk about it.
What are the repercussions of like a culture or a business that has a culture that's not clearly defined, maybe to begin with, or maybe that not follow? Because I think a lot of the times we hear this topic a lot on like, yes, we need to focus on culture. I don't know which book we read initially, or like how, but as business owners, we understand that this is something important, but it's not urgent until something happens. So what is the cost that business owners pay when culture isn't clearly defined?
You pay it in staff turnover and recruiting costs. Like that's the big part. And so if you like, we actually track we actually don't track length of time, which I probably should, but we track our voluntary and involuntary attrition rate inside of our organization. Voluntary is they quit, involuntary is we terminated them, and is what it is running a business. Not proud to say that we have to terminate people, but that's just the reality of running a business. They're no longer a fit, or they're not the right person for the right seat. But we track those numbers to see where that's at. And when you think about the cost of it, I mean, do you know what it costs you to hire one person into your business, from the actual dollars spent on, let's say, advertising for that team member? And then do you know what the time commitment is for the person for the recruiting department to be able to hire that person in? Do you know what the time commitment is for that individual when they first start to be able to train them, right? And when you factor this all in, you're going to come up with numbers that are thousands, or if not tens of thousands of dollars to hire and bring in one new person into your organization. If you miss culture and you get it wrong and you have a high turnover rate, that's your cost. Right? There's no set number on that. It's specific to each individual organization on what your numbers are, but that's your cost. Then you think about further repercussions. Let's say you have like a CSR, if you're a home service business. If you're an agency and you're listening to this, you've got marketing account managers or client success specialists or account managers or whatever, any client-facing role that has continual conversations with the same people over and over again. If you have to replace that person, what type of a mark that does that leave on your business? Right? What sort of lost revenue opportunities are there if you had a salesperson that was in place that was really good, but they left because they didn't like your culture? Yeah. So there's other factors that are just the intangibles to it.
Yeah, I think, especially, when we're focusing as business owners on what we're creating, I think a lot of the times we focus on, like the revenue that's going to be lost and all these other components that are obviously important for the business. Yet we forget that directly affects us as business owners too, right? Like just like the burnout that you experience by not having the right culture in place, like some, just attending, a session, with your team where you're not actually enjoying, like what you're discussing, or the energy that's felt that's not motivating you. I think that's, can be also a reason why business owners tend to, not want to drive the business into growth, because they're so focused on what's happening right now. As you're growing businesses, and as business owners grow their teams, we talked earlier in this chat on how important it is to have this being trickled down. How can business owners teach this to their managers without overcomplicating it, without making it too complex? What's an easy way for them to be able to translate or to send this culture out to everybody in the team, in the business?
Managers have to believe it first and foremost. They have to be on board with it. And so one good exercise to do yearly with your leadership team, or even quarterly, depending on how you want to look at it, we actually take a look at our core values quarterly. And again, we run on the EOS framework. And so one of the things that we do on our quarterlies is saying, hey, are our core values still our core values? And the leadership team goes yes or no. And if they all say yes, then guess what? They get the core values, right? This is where we had that change, right? Where we actually changed one of our core values. We also rank our team members quarterly on our core values. We do like a plus minus, or a minus. So, and I'll go into this in my session too, a little bit more on like why this matters and how to be able to do that. But we rank them on our core values. The plus is most of the time. The plus minus is some of the time. The minus is rarely. And we rank them on how they exhibit and live our core values. Well, we found that one of them was always in this, like this rarely, it was like a minus or plus minus pretty much across the board for everyone. We're like, well, wait, if everybody is scoring this, is it actually important? Is it actually moving the needle? Is it actually something that they are bought into? And our leadership team went, no. Like, okay, well, let's revisit that. Let's take a look. And there's some exercises that we're going to go into in my message as well on how to be able to figure these out. Okay, well, how do you find your core values if one of them isn't right? Or if you're one of the people that are listening and you have honesty and transparency as your core value, how do I change that? Well, we're going to dive into that when we have in my session. But that's a part, is when you have that with your leadership team and they feel empowered and part of the decision-making process on helping craft these core values or change the core values or maintain the core values. Now they've been bought into it because they had a seat at the table when it was initially done. From there, it's just continually reinforcing and repeating that. It doesn't necessarily have to be all your managers. It's your culture steward, right? You pick your one person and you pick your one pony that you're going to ride. And that's your culture steward. That person has to believe it. That person has to live it. That person has to do it.
What happens if you find a team member, and maybe I'm like, like this might be some like really hard conversations, that's kind of like case by case, but what happens when you find a team member that, especially in leadership, right? Because we're talking about the leaders, like trickling this down to everybody else. What if they don't believe in it? Like, have you found yourself in that situation, or have you found businesses that you have like consulted maybe or worked with in that situation where like the leader is not following the same guidelines and values? I feel like can you change, that? Can you like retrain this person? Can that be solvable? Or do you feel like it's something that you have to take other measurements?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a nuanced case by case to kind of determine what values they're following and what values they're not. In terms of broad strokes, it's having a conversation with them to say, hey, again, if you're monitoring it, right? If you're doing these core value assessments quarterly or biannual at minimum, and now you actually rank your leadership team on it. If they're getting the plus minuses and the minuses based off of their peers as well as the other leadership group inside of it. Well, now you have a conversation and say, hey, you're not really living the core values. Now it becomes almost like a performance improvement plan or a PIP or just a tough conversation, if you want to label it that, to say, hey, these are our core values. You're not living them on a day-by-day basis. And you have that conversation and you expose it. What's going on? Is there anything there? Do you believe in them, et cetera? If they can't rally around those core values and then they're not the right fit. I'm sorry to say that. The thing is that sometimes people think that they're scared to let go of a top person in their organization. Sales is like the easiest one to pick on this, right? They're scared to terminate the top salesperson because they are a bad apple and they are detrimental to the organizational culture. Well, okay, what is that person costing you, right? In the long run, yeah, okay, they're a top performer, But when you remove that top performer from a sales role because they were a bad apple and they didn't fit the culture, guess what the rest of the team does? They celebrate it. They pat you on the back. They say, man, that owner or that manager or that leader, whew, that was a tough one. That person was a top performer, but man, this team matters more than one person.
Yeah, I love that.
And sometimes, and sometimes that's the leader, right? Sometimes that's a manager, like inside the business, and that's part of the realities of running a business is that there are tough conversations, and yeah, sometimes that sucks.
Yeah. Now let's think about having new team members coming in. Obviously, these core values are very relevant when we're hiring people. How can leaders avoid hiring somebody who seemed like a good fit in the beginning, like maybe did great in interviews, but it actually wasn't?
Best organizations, they still get hiring decisions wrong. Some of the best ones out there. You're still going to get it wrong some of the time. What is it, like 70, 80% of the time you're going to get it right? So knowing that 20 to 30% of the time you're going to get it wrong. That happens. So knowing that, first off, is that you're nobody bats 100% when you're hiring and you're recruiting. The thing that I like to do in our interviews is I actually ask culture-based questions in the first interview. First interview is more of a cultural fit with inside the organization, a little bit of skills, but more cultural based assessment. And so, as you know, one of our core values is be resourceful. Well, one of the questions we ask in the interview is, what was the last problem you solved via YouTube, and what was the problem? Right, so now I'm gauging to see if they're resourceful or not, right? And if they use YouTube to solve problems, they might say, well, I don't use YouTube. I use ChatGPT to help solve my problems. And this is one of the last ones that I solved. And so are they resourceful enough to be able to look through that? One of our other core values is purpose-driven, being part of something that's bigger than yourself. Well, my third question in the interviews, and our team runs some of the interviews too, is what motivates you? Now we ask what motivates them. But then here's where we trip them up a little bit later. I want to see if there's a connection piece. So anybody who's thinking about applying it on purpose media now knows some of my ulterior motives with how I ask some of these questions. Totally fine, by the way. One of the last questions that we ask before we go into like our policies and procedures and what it looks like working here, all those sorts of things, is if money were unlimited, what would you do? Because now their answers, if they are in alignment with their purpose, what motivates them and what they would do if money were unlimited should have some form of an overlap and should connect. Sometimes they're like vastly different answers. And you're like, what the heck? Like, are you saying like what motivates you, what you think is going to motivate you, like what I want to hear? And so like it's these red flags that you have. And again, asking questions that are intentional to your culture is what's going to help, but just know that you're never going to get it right 100% of the time.
Yeah. I think this topic in itself, I think it's going to be very relevant for any business owner. How often do you recommend, reviewing this, like revisiting your core values? I think this would be probably the best opportunity at Scale with Stability if you haven't done that as a business owner to like take the time to attend a session and go through this topic, this topic together. I'm sure that you're gonna make it like very like workshop-y style where they're gonna be able to like take some time to like actually write down. But how often would you recommend if somebody's not attending the event to review this?
Quarterly, a minimum, to just review it. At maximum, I guess quarterly, at minimum once a year, right? And minimum once a year, to be able to review. But I would like to see it quarterly, and do that more often. The more often that you do it and you review your core values to make sure that they're a good fit for your organization, the better. I then think you should communicate them weekly to your team members, because if you're not communicating it, again, that's just words on a wall, right? How many times do people walk through if you have a physical office? I mean, if you're in a remote world, that's even more challenging, right? How do you put core values on a wall in a remote world? Sure, we have virtual offices like Kumo Space, and I think you guys have a different one that you guys use for it. But like, can you put them there? Sure, do people look at them? I don't know. It's like the same thing with core values on a wall. They're just kind of there. It's decor. It's art. People ignore that after a while. But if you say it over and over and again in all hands meetings, now it's going to resonate with them, and they're going to keep it.
Yeah, I mean, like I think the best thing would be like if they're calling you out on, your core values, and like keeping each other accountable for that. I love that. For anybody that is not attending Scale with Stability, still trying to figure out, is this the best next step for me? Should I attend next month? almost a month away for the event, which is crazy to me. It's
That's
happening
wild.
next month.
Yeah.
I know it's wild. Like the
Yep.
time is just going by so quickly. What would be your thoughts? What would you recommend? What would be your like tip of advice, for them as they're navigating like that friction between like, should I go? Should I make this investment? I'm also super busy. Like I think for most of us business owners, it's not so much about like the revenue, in terms of like buying your ticket, it's much the time that you have to take away from being at the event and just investing in that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's actually funny. Somebody called me yesterday. They're like, "How do you determine on what events you go to and which ones you don't?" And this was for like, there's some folks that are in the HVAC space. There's three ladies that are all having their birthdays, their 40th birthday this year, and so like, let's go to Mexico. And so everybody's invited to Mexico. It's an 18 plus resort, so no kids. I'm like, sold. I don't have to bring my kids. But she asked me this question yesterday. It's actually kind of fitting. It's like, well, how do you determine which events you go to time away from the business and in whatever? I look at it through a lens of, okay, well, what can I learn and who can I meet? And so when you think about the event, scale with stability is a little bit different than going to an industry event where you're going to, like if you're an agency and you're going to go to the committed mastermind event that you guys put on. Well, that's a little bit different of an event than scale with stability, because committed mastermind is a small group, 30, 35 people. You're sharpening your axe with other people that are in that like mindset. Scale with stability is bigger. There's a lot more tracks. There's a lot of different paths that a person can go down. But I can tell you this from last year, I left. I don't fill my notebook when I'm listening to talks anymore. I used to like write feverishly on everything that I was in, and then I would never review it. I listen intently, and I find, ooh, that was a good nugget, and I write it down. And so if you can come away from an event such as this with scale of stability, and you can get 3 to 5, 7 golden nuggets for your business that are going to help you either personally grow and level up or your business grow and level up, what sort of if people look at the monetary value on that and the time away, well, the stuff that you learn is intangible to that, right? You can't really connect this dollar value with the event. And it's an archaic way of thinking, in my opinion. I mean, that's the accountant's way of thinking. The economist's way of thinking is, okay, what's my opportunity there? How can I leverage this to be able to A, meet some other people, B, learn some things, to be able to sharpen my axe on my business and get better? That's what this is about. And so if you want to level up yourself and you want to scale your business with stability, right? That's the name of your guys' event. That's what you need to go to this, because there's last year I remember going down the tracks, and I'm excited for this year to see what you guys do different. I know there's last year's there's some phenomenal things in the event. It was just completely different than anything that I've ever been to before, in a good way, because it's learning about personally and professionally to be able to grow your business.
I love it. Well, guys, you heard it. If you haven't gotten your ticket, make sure to do it. Go to scalewithstability.com/summit. We're going to be there April 22nd to the 24th. It's going to feel like you're going back to college in many ways, because we're actually hosting it at a university. And I think that's part of the fun. But I cannot wait to be back with everybody and just come and learn, as Thad is saying. And I cannot wait for your session, Thad. I think it's going to be really impactful for many business owners that are, trying to navigate this shift, in culture sometime, and the shift even on the vision of the company. And with that, this values opportunity to reassess, where we're at and how do we communicate it to the team so that they can trickle it down to everybody else. And for us to have like one vision where we're going, I think it's super important. So thank you so much for taking the time and effort of making this happen. I know everybody in that session is going to be blessed and supported, and they're going to have definitely a north to shoot for this year in 2026. So I appreciate you, and thank you guys. See you in the next one.
See you guys.